kindness is free. It doesn't cost us a dime to be kind. So make sure we give it away with abundance, knowing that we will never run out. When it comes to kindness and love, we're all millionaires. We're actually kindness and love billionaires. So let's live that way. When you speak about the veterans, I mean, that's something also that's really dear to my heart. My dad, when I was a kid, he was in the Navy for the first 4 or 5 years of my life. He eventually got out and did his thing for many years. But later on, he rejoined the National Guard as a chaplain. And he's had several tours over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And as a Globetrotter, one of the highlights of my career or the highlights of my years would be the chance that we would have to go to the different military bases across Europe and Asia between Christmas and Thanksgiving. And to be able to go over to those military bases, those small cities, so to speak, and bring a little bit of home to those families, those kids, even the basketball clinics. We used to do basketball clinics on a few of those military bases abroad. And to be able to have those connections and be able to say thanks to those military veterans and people taking time to leave their country to go across the waters, across the land to make sure that we have a better place here. Just so much respect for you guys. And I just want to say thanks to all the veterans who are listening, and we're thankful for you.
Welcome to the Onward Podcast. This is Emily Harmon, your host. The Onward Podcast features authentic conversations on facing adversity and moving forward and discovering ourselves along the way. I conducted this interview with Herb Lang back in January of 2021, and now I'm publishing it as a Onward Podcast episode. As a Harlem Globetrotter, Herbert Lang's nickname was Flight Time, and he invites you to take a flight with him on a journey through life and around the world. Listen to this interview and then check out his website, herblang.com. Upon retiring from his 18-year career as a member of the Harlem Globetrotters, as a player and a coach, Herb decided it was time for him to inspire and share his worldly experiences with the world, which had shared so much with him. Herb's hashtag is kindness is free, and he truly believes that it's important to treat others even better than you expect to be treated by people. Every major accomplishment in his life has been the direct result of others speaking up for him, trusting and believing he would not fail them in doing so. This is a wonderful interview. We talk about his time on the Harlem Globetrotters team. We talk about the times he has suffered from depression. He shares so much, and he's giving back. Thank you for that, Herb. I agree. Kindness is free. We are live. I'm so excited to be interviewing you, Herb. It was an honor to meet you just a few weeks ago. We had such a good conversation, and I'm like, let's go live and talk basketball. And
hey, I'm definitely excited to be here. I mean, I'm thankful to Russ for connecting us and giving me this opportunity to speak with you. I mean, you've accomplished so much over your time, military and things that you're doing post-military. So just happy to be in alignment with somebody who has, common and similar interests. And that's, pretty much making this world a better place and doing what we can to connect the dots.
Right. Russ Barnes, he's the one that interviewed us, and I'm so thankful for that. So let's see. You were Harlem Globetrotter, and you said you brought your basketball. Let's see it.
I did bring my basketball right here. This is one of the basketballs that I used to do my thing with.
Wow, you can still do it.
Hey, it's like riding a bike. Once you can do it, you can always do it.
That's awesome. I remember in your book, I remember reading that you wore your fingernail out, practicing.
Yeah. So, Emily, when I came from training camp that year, first of all, going to training camp, I really didn't know what to expect, but I knew that there was going to be some things that I had never tried before. And spinning the basketball was something that I did try before because I knew that was one of the things I would have to learn, but it didn't really dawn on me until I returned home from that first training camp that I really had to learn how to do it, because once I made the team and I left, I couldn't spin the basketball on my finger. And one of the things about joining the Globetrotters back then, it wasn't about whether you could handle the basketball as far as the tricks and spinning the basketball. They wanted to find the best basketball players that were out there. And that's what it was based on in the beginning. It was based on my leaping ability and could I play the game of basketball. So after I made the team, that was the opportunity for me to take a basketball home and work as hard as I could to make sure that I didn't have to go back to normal work per se. So I remember getting home and I spent days, hours, probably a couple of weeks, all day spinning the basketball on my finger before I could actually do it for at least, 10 seconds. So like with anything, a lot of hard work and dedication, you could accomplish anything.
Well, tell us, how did you make the Globetrotter team? Because, I've read your book. There's your book. People want to get it. And I think you brought
Projects, Popes, and Presidents.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right there. Amazon bestseller, international bestseller. But
So I read it, but like, how did you become a Globetrotter?
Well, I mean, in college, I had a pretty good career. We played in a conference called the Trans-America Athletic Conference. I went to Centenary College, located in Shreveport, Louisiana, and a lot of the schools that we played in my conference were through Georgia, through Florida. We had University of Central Florida, Florida International, and schools like that. And my junior year, I actually led the conference in scoring and was able to make first team all conference. Now going into my senior year, I was preseason conference player of the year and ended up having a pretty good year, not as good as the year before. I had new coaches, which were great coaches, but it was just a different program, a different type of basketball that I had been used to playing over the previous 3 years. But fortunately for me, the coach at that time, my senior year, he was connected with the NCAA, really good. His name's Billy Kennedy. He was coach actually for Texas A&M for many years up until about 2 years ago. But he ended up putting a phone call in for me after the season was over, and they ended up inviting me. The NCAA invited me to the slam dunk contest, which comes on every year at the Final Four on ESPN. Those people who don't know what that is, just Google 1998 college slam dunk contest and you'll see me. But after winning the dunk contest, I ended up going back to school to finish my degree. During that time of 1998, the NBA had a lockout, so I didn't really have an opportunity to go to any NBA training camps per se, but I did have an opportunity to go back to school and complete my degree, which is in health and physical education. One of my main mentors, Herbert Williams, my high school basketball coach, that was his major. And to know the impact that he had on so many people's lives, including myself, really got me excited to do the same thing. But I had a little detour along the way. After graduating, my roommate at the time, his name is Alan Sahatrai. He actually went to a Globetrotter game while I was working as a personal trainer there in Shreveport, Louisiana. And I remember him coming back home from the game as I got home from work about 10 o'clock that night. We got home about the same time, and he was telling me that he had gone to the Globetrotter game, and it was amazing, and that I could do all the things that they could do. And he actually went out of his way to get his program signed and to find out who the coach was, at that time. And actually, the scout happened to be there, and he brought home the program. And I was thinking when I looked at it, man, I don't want to become a Globetrotter. I can't do the stuff that they do. But after coming home from work, $7 an hour one day, I said, hey, man, let me get that program. And I ended up sending email. I made a couple phone calls, and they eventually invited me to their training camp. And 18 years later.
So you went to the training camp. I know the answer, but I'm just saying, in Harlem, in New York, right?
Nope. Actually, a lot of people think that would be the place. But when I joined the team, we were having training camp in a place called Prescott, Arizona. It's in the northern part of Arizona, probably about an hour and a half north of Phoenix. Phoenix is relative because that is where the Globetrotters were located at for most of my career until recently. Probably about 5 or 6 years ago, they relocated to Atlanta, Georgia. And, they've been doing great things ever since.
Okay, so let me see. So you go to the tryouts, and the tryouts are all about, like, can you spin the ball on your finger and what kind of fancy moves can you make, right? That's what they wanted to see, right?
Well, actually, that wasn't it. That's not at all it. The Globetrotters were actually one of the first teams to hold training camps. And the thing about that they look for, again, they look for the best basketball players that they could find. So when I went to training camp at first, there was 18 rookies that came in. The veteran players hadn't even come in. And that pre-camp lasted about 3 days. So after that 3 days, they had dwindled us down to about 8 players. And those were the guys who were pretty much going to make the team for that year. And a few days later, the veteran players came in. And that's when practice kind of loosened up a little bit and became a little bit more fun. So what would happen is in the morning sessions, we would just play basketball. It was about scrimmaging, all the things that you would see at your typical NBA training camp, your college practices. Those are the things that we did. But in the evening, things would loosen up and lighten up a little bit. And you'd get to learn some of the things that made the Globetrotters, or that make the Globetrotters such an amazing organization. And that's the camaraderie, the three-man weave, the amazing things that they could do with the basketball. And along with that, getting to meet some of the legends like Curly Neal, Sweet Lou Dunbar, as well as some of the guys that I admired throughout college.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. So, and then you traveled to so many different places because you grew up in Arkansas, right?
That's right. I grew up in a small town in Arkansas. It's right between Little Rock and Memphis, right off I-40. And I used to often tell people, if you're driving I-40 and you get between Little Rock and Memphis and you decide you may want to stop in Brinkley, make sure you don't blink because you might miss it. And if you miss it, you'll have to drive probably another 10 or 15 minutes just to turn around and get back to there. But I remember one of my former high school teammates, basketball and football, after I joined the Globetrotters and I had traveled to a couple of different countries, I remember him sending me a message saying, "Oh man, you're famous now." And I was thinking, no, I'm not really that famous. The organization that I'm playing for, they're pretty famous. But he said, "Well, you traveled past Little Rock and Memphis, so you're famous to me."
That's funny. It seems to me, though, after reading your book, you are really good at adapting to change. You had a change in leadership in your college coach, and the time that you were with the Globetrotters, I think there was like 2 different changes in owners, and the owners had different visions for the team and the roles the players would play and stuff like that. And you seem to take it pretty well, at least from how you describe in your book. So what recommendations do you have for people because we've got change going on all around us, right? With COVID, with new president, all these different things. What recommendation do you have for people with respect to how to handle change?
Well, I mean, a lot of times people are real pushy and hesitant to change, but the world's changing every day. You have to be able to adapt in order to survive in this world that we live in. And for me, I learned that at a very young age. I mean, some of the obstacles that I faced early on is, hey, I'm too small. But eventually I grew, and change is something that we all get to deal with. It's not something that we have to, but we get to deal with it, and we have to deal with it, if that makes sense. So for me, I've always seen opportunities in change, opportunities in the setbacks. And a lot of things that set me back in life are the things I've learned the most from. So with what we're going through, even with the COVID right now and with the new president coming in, I just think that we all have to be open-minded. We have to realize that nothing really stays the same over a period of time, and that we get to grow. We get to make this world a better place. And I was just speaking the other day on one of the calls. I was on one of my Zoom calls, and I was talking about the trip that Alina and I, my girlfriend and I, we took from California to Florida because we're building a home down there. And I just remember driving through all the different states. We took 8 days, and I shared about how, you drive through the red states, you drive through the blue states. And as I looked around, I see the signs. This was after the election. I see, the Trump signs, the Biden signs, and I don't care who you voted for. Honestly, I don't care. All I care about is us coming together and making this world a better place. But I begin to realize how divided we actually seem. And I also begin to think that, man, I imagine that these signs probably make some people feel really uncomfortable, the ones that are in people's yards in front of your homes. And I just want to challenge everybody, with those signs that we put out. Some of us put our president, our vice president, or whoever we're rooting for. Some of us put our favorite football team, our favorite basketball team, the college that we went to out there. But I just encourage people to put something out there to let your neighbors know that you still care. You're a good person. We can have a conversation. I remember today I was listening to a little bit of the inauguration, and I think it was the Reverend Beeman from Delaware. He's good friends with the president. He talked about not putting fear in our neighbors, something to that effect. Not exactly in those words, but that's what I encourage. Let's realize that we get to live together. Let's make our neighbors know that they're welcome. We're welcome to have a conversation, although we may not agree on everything. Maybe we have the same football team that we root for. Maybe we're the same religion. Maybe we went to the same college. There's so many more things that we have in common that we can actually grow together on. So I just see a world coming closer. We've been through a lot throughout this last year, throughout, the last decade, I'd even say. But I'm just excited about the potential for the future and this world becoming a better place.
Oh, my gosh. Me too. So many quotes. Here's somebody, Felicia. I talked with her earlier today, calling in from Arkansas.
Little Rock. That's right up the road. She knows where I'm from. She probably knows where Brinkley is.
Yeah, she probably does. All right. So I thought that flight time was based on all right, you can slam dunk. Your time in the air, flying to the basket is long. Is that what it's about?
Well, yeah, when I joined the team back in 1998, the owner at that time, 99 actually, the owner at that time was Manny Jackson, who was also a former Globetrotter, successful businessman, and gave me the opportunity. But when I came to training camp and he eventually, saw me jump, he knew that I'd won the college dunk contest the year before. He said that every time I jumped, I should get frequent flower miles. And instead, there came the name flight time. But, over the course of time, as you know, the longer we play, the longer we are physical, some of these things that we used to do when we were younger, we're no longer able to do. So I'd say probably after 15 years, I wasn't dunking as much in the games. And I remember young people, kids, young girls as well, would come up and say, flight time, flight time. You have flight time on the back of your jersey and you didn't dunk tonight. Now, I would always dunk in the warm up, at least in the warm up if I didn't dunk in the game. But I said, you know what? You're right. That's not why they call me flight time. They actually call me flight time because I'm always at the airport on time for my flight. So I'm still flight time and I still get to be flight time. So, yeah, I mean, those hops are one of the things that the first things to go. But actually, I'm thinking now, even at 44 years old, I'm thinking about turning back the hands of time. And, when we get to play that game of horse, I may be able to show you that I can still dunk it.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, my hair is flight timing. It's like flying away. But for those of you who don't know, I created a poll in the Onward Movement Facebook group, which I lead, and then also in LinkedIn. But in LinkedIn, I don't really understand how these events work, so I can't go back and find the poll. But, the poll was, can Emily beat Herbert Lang in a game of horse? Because, I used to play basketball. And so 4 people have said, seriously? And then 3 people said yes. 4 said yes, of course. And one of them is my mom. So
anything is possible. I believe in you as much as you.
One said nope, and I'm going to have to kick her out of the Onward Movement. She doesn't.
Well, I mean, it's not to say that I haven't been beaten horse. There are people who have beat me. Usually it's because I was never a great shooter. I was always a scorer, so to speak, in college. I was a streaky shooter, and I just kind of knew how to put the ball in the basket. But as I became a Globetrotter, there are some tricks, some trick shots and things that I know that I can make that you probably would have a difficult time. So I would just advise you early on to try not to miss as much as you can. Try to make every shot, because if you miss, I'm going to have to pull some stuff out of the bag that I know that you're probably not capable of. But hey, if you can knock down some jump shots, you may be able to take me out.
I know how to scout, and I'm going to watch all of your Harlem Globetrotter games, and I'm going to really get it down. And you know what? We don't even have to really be together in the same space to play horse, right? Like, I could go to a basketball court, and then you could go to a basketball court. We could bring our cameras and have someone with us, and you tell me how far back the shot was. And
virtual horse. Actually, that's something that we did a few years ago with the Globetrotters. We did a virtual horse game, and I remember going out to a park and really taking a long shot that somebody had taken actually over a building, and they gave me a letter because I couldn't make the shot.
And they gave you a letter.
They gave me a letter.
Herb says, Michael says, you're bringing back so many fun memories. I was fortunate enough to go to a Globetrotter game in the 70s. I'll never forget it. Thanks for being here. Thank you, Michael. And, one of the things that I think you had to learn is how to be more outgoing.
Yeah.
Globetrotter. Because are you normally like an introvert, or you were kind of shy probably? I don't know.
Well, I mean, in college, if you met some of my teammates when I first got to college, they would call me the squarest person that you ever, met. And I remember one of my teammates, even at that time when I first joined, he was a senior and I was a freshman. He was like, man, you're the kind of dude I would let date my sister, because I was really quiet. I was all about school. I was focused. I had a girlfriend at that time, but yeah, I was pretty shy. I'm not a person to jump in and become the dominant person. I like to feel things out. I've been the captain of pretty much every team that I've been on. So I guess I've kind of been a natural leader. In high school, I was the captain of my basketball team, eventually in college, becoming the captain. But it was me actually taking a step back and learning from other guys who were leaders before me. And I think that's a quality that I'm happy that I had. And when you get to the Globetrotters, it's a whole new story, because quiet doesn't get you paid and it doesn't get you a job. And I just remember coming in and joining and looking at some of the guys who've been there for a number of years, guys like Showbiz Jackson, Showtime Gaffney, Michael Wild Thing Wilson, who's still today the Guinness Book World Record holder for the highest slam dunk. And these were guys who mentored me, Curly Boo Johnson. And these were guys who I watched, who were outgoing, who knew how to speak in front of a camera, knew how to talk to young people, knew how to just capture a crowd. And it took me, I'd probably say, a good 2 or 3 years. We used to say it takes 2 or 3 years to really become a Globetrotter, because again, it's more than about the game of basketball. I mean, you're going into different schools, you're going into hospital, and that's a big trust factor. You're being put on stage to represent a brand, which even at that time was 75, 85 years in the making, which is now almost 100 years. So I definitely had a chance to come out of my shell, and I'm so thankful for that, because if it were not for those experiences, I wouldn't have the confidence to even be here speaking to you right now. I wouldn't have the confidence to speak in front of groups of young people, groups of people who have their own companies, corporations, and I'm really grateful for that. But yeah, you definitely cannot be shy as a Globetrotter, because I've never heard of a Globetrotter called Shy Time.
No. Did they teach you public speaking or anything, or did you just learn from the veteran Globetrotters?
Emily, one of the best classes that I took in college was public speaking. In public speaking at Centenary College, we had to do, many different types of speeches. And for me, college that I went to was predominantly a white college, and my high school was different. So I had to learn how to speak even in front of a group of people who may not that I wasn't typically as comfortable in front of. So when you get to Globetrotters, yeah, I mean, they have a great PR team. One of the guys who taught me and helped me through, his name's Brett Meister. He's still there today. And when you come in as a Globetrotter, we actually put you through PR training. You have veteran guys like myself who actually ask you some of the tough questions that we get asked, that kind of catch you off guard and prepare you, that you're able to answer those questions in an effective manner and in a way that you don't look startled or caught off guard. There's always a way to divert and get your point across what you're actually trying to discuss.
So what advice would you have to the listeners if someone's out there that wants to be a Globetrotter?
Well, anybody that wants to be a Globetrotter, hey, anything is possible. They were one of the first teams. I still say we, like I'm still playing, but we always say once a Globetrotter, always a Globetrotters. But the Globetrotters were one of the first teams to allow a female to play with them. And that was Lynette Woodard back in the mid 80s. That was before the WNBA. And when I was with the Globetrotters, actually, I think it was 2010 or 11, after about a 20-year absence, we had our first female Globetrotter in about 20 years. And her name's TNT. We call her TNT. Her name's Fatima Lister now. But anybody that wants to become a Globetrotter, I mean, anything is possible, For me, it's something that I never dreamed about. It takes a lot of hard work, dedication, but I would definitely encourage you to, go on YouTube, look at some videos, follow some of those amazing players that they have on there. I'll give you a couple names: Bull Bullard, Hammer Harrison. Those guys are still out there doing it. My friend Big Easy, they're still out there handling the ball and they're still entertaining people. But I just encourage you, with anything, don't give up on your dreams. That's one of the things that I talk about, whether it's becoming a Globetrotter, whether it's becoming an inspirational speaker, whether it's becoming an author, whether it's becoming a movie director. Just work hard at it. And with what we have today in our society with social media and social networking, there's so many people that you can follow and learn from and study the patterns and the path that they took to get to where they, the goals that they accomplished. And I think that with all the access that we have, I think that we can pretty much become anything that we want to be in this life. Even me at 44 years old, I tell people I'm continuing to dream. I dreamed about, as a kid, becoming a professional athlete. And when people would ask me, did you ever dream about becoming a Globetrotter? I said, no, I did not. So when I actually had a chance to become a Globetrotter, it was more than a dream come true, because I do remember as a young child, my great-grandmother, she loved the Globetrotters. Anytime that they would come on Disney Wild World of Sports, she was always having it on, and she just loved them. And that was one of the things I hate. I mean, she passed away a few years before I joined the Globetrotters, but I always knew that she was looking down, smiling, excited to know that I had accomplished that feat of being a part of her favorite basketball team.
Oh, that's awesome. So let's see. Your book is Projects, Popes, and Presidents. So popes, presidents,
That's it.
You get to meet? Tell us some stories. I mean, people still got to read the book, but yeah.
Right. Well, I had an opportunity. The first president that I met wasn't the president at that time. It was Bill Clinton. And me being from Arkansas, I remember Bill Clinton coming. I think he was campaigning to run for governor at that time. It was in the early 90s. And he came to speak at our high school. And I remember standing in the walkway and having an opportunity to shake his hand, the governor of Arkansas at that time. So I guess that was a sign of things to come. But the next opportunity came at the annual Easter egg roll that they have every year at the White House. A lot of people register and try to get the lottery tickets because it's a lottery system that people get a chance to go. And luckily for me, the Globetrotters provided me that opportunity without actually having to put my name in the lottery. But the first time I went, I had a chance to meet President Obama. And I was disappointed because Brett Meister, our PR guy, did not get the photos that I needed him to get. And I told him, I said, man, you only have photos of me standing in the background. What is this? I shook his hand. I shot hoops with him, and this is all that we have. So we moved forward. The next year, I had an opportunity to go again to the same event. I had an opportunity to, again, play basketball with the president. I had a chance to shoot hoops. I actually have photos of me standing over him doing push-ups because we had to deal with the little kids, the young kids that we were out there training throughout the course of the day that, when you miss a shot, you have to do a few push-ups. Not every time. I definitely had to take that opportunity to stand over the commander-in-chief at that time. But it's just really a blessing. It's something that I never even dreamed of. And, even moving forward, I had a chance to meet the Pope Francis right there. It was one of the last great things I was able to do as a Globetrotter. We actually were touring over in Italy at the time, myself and, of course, there was about 10 of us. But our PR guy, he called and said, "Hey guys, we have an opportunity to meet the Pope." And it was myself and a guy named Ant Axon at that time. We were the ones that were part of the group that were touring. We were two of the veteran players on the team. So they took us off the tour. We took a train down to Rome, and a couple of guys flew in from the United States. And I remember the meeting the night before. Our president at that time, Kirk Snyder, he told me, he said, "Herb, when we get close to the Pope, you're going to be the person that spins the basketball on the Pope's finger." And at that moment, my excitement went from not as excited to being super nervous, because I mean, this is 5-6 years ago. This is when social media is even, really getting bigger, not to the height that it is right now, but people were going viral. And I just remember thinking immediately, like, this could be a disaster, because if I spin this basketball on my finger and it actually hit the Pope in the head or something like that, I'll be going viral for the wrong reason. And fortunately for me, that didn't happen. I was able to actually get the ball up on the Pope's finger for a good 1 second, 1 to 2 seconds.
Your attitude about that, because a lot of people have been in a situation like that. They can relate, like, oh my gosh, and then you've got all these negative thoughts running through your head.
Well, I mean, I was able to shift after I spoke with my dad. My dad, he's a minister, and he was super excited about it. And he kind of talked about, what an amazing opportunity it was and how blessed I was. And it just put me back into a different space. And that's what I took it. I said, man, this is an opportunity of a lifetime. This is an opportunity that even my teammates, they're not even going to have a chance to get. So I was able to shift it pretty quickly. And in the morning, when I woke up, I was excited. My hands, of course, were still a little bit sweaty, but I knew the impact that it would have on my family, being able to say that I'd done that, and just the media, all the different media outlets that it showed up on the next day. And I knew that would happen. Those are things that got me excited. And even now I brag about being the only person to ever spin the basketball on the Pope's finger. There's been plenty of professional basketball players since then. I think there's a few NBA guys who went to meet the Pope a couple of years ago, but none of them spun the basketball on his finger. So to this day, I'm still the only person alive to ever spin the basketball on the Pope's finger.
That's awesome. That's awesome. But you had some downtime too when you were a Globetrotter. Like you got depressed.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's people from the outside looking in. They think that things are always great, and for the most part, I have nothing to complain about. But sometimes things don't always go the way that we expect them to go. Sometimes we get in our own heads. And for me, it was some of the relationships that I was going through, dealing with my kids, and, not really being a present father all the time. These are some of the things that kind of got me down. And some of my friends would look at me and get so excited to talk about me touring and all the things that I had a chance to do. But at the same time, I would look at them and say, man, you're so lucky that you actually have a family. You have a wife. You have your kids that you get to come home to every single day. So with me during that time of Globetrotting, it was a lot of me dealing with it on my own, but also talking to a lot of my teammates who also dealt with similar things. And back then, it wasn't as prevalent to speak about being depressed or our emotions. And even in the African-American community, it was something that was kind of frowned up on until recently. You see a lot of these professional athletes coming out talking about some of the things that are going on in their head. And it really wasn't until after my Globetrotter career was over with that I was able to really shift my mind and realize that I needed to get some counseling. So being able to go to, have some counseling sessions and talk about what I was going through, talk to some of my other teammates, get support from them who had also gone through some of the similar situations, are what got me through it. And even now, beyond those Globetrotting days and those depressing days, I've learned how to kind of help myself through reading, through meditation, just getting support, getting in groups, and being able to talk openly about some of the things that we're dealing with. So that's what I encourage anybody to do. Don't be afraid to talk about it. It's okay. You'd be surprised at how many people are dealing with some of the same issues that you're dealing with. I mean, in this society that we live in right now, with social media, we see this person doing that person doing this. And a lot of times we feel like, man, I'm not doing anything. I'm not doing enough. But what you're not realizing is sometimes what you see is not really what you're seeing. There's people that are putting on a facade and pretending. So do not be discouraged. Do not be afraid to seek help. Do not be afraid to seek counseling. Don't be afraid to share with the person that's closest to you. And don't be worried about being judged, because what you may come to find is, hey, that person who you think, is the strongest person in the world and got it all together, they may be dealing with some of the same issues and setbacks that you may be dealing with.
That's one of the reasons I started this Onward podcast, because, just talking to people about how they faced tough times and how they got over it, and helps people see that they're not alone. Just before this interview, Steve Iceland, who was one of the first or second people that I interviewed. He was a very senior Navy official. He talked in that episode about his depression, and he just messaged me. Every once in a while, he messages me, hey, because I don't hear a lot back about how people liked an episode or whatever. But every once in a while, he messages me, hey, Emily, I just got another message from somebody who listened to that episode, and they really thank me for speaking out about my depression because they realized they weren't alone. So I appreciate you for sharing your story too, Herb.
Well, Emily, even in this day and time, I mean, I think that this has probably been one of the toughest years for most of us. And a lot of us, I mean, statistically, we see that there is a lot of depression and what we've been dealing with COVID and not really being able to be around our loved ones and being social as much as we have been in the past. A lot of people have become depressed of it. I mean, even myself, early on, I found myself watching the numbers on TV. It was like watching a lottery, watching these numbers go up. And it kind of put me in a mood to where I was like, all right, let me take a step back. And I'm just so thankful that I was able to, I hate to say go through this, but I've been able to grow through this and learn more about myself, as well as learn more about other people that are close to me. You know, I've become closer with my aunt, become closer with my mom, become closer with my dad. I think I've, even become closer with my kids through this. It's just been an opportunity to connect and realize that we get to support each other through the good and the bad times.
Yes, definitely, definitely. And just a heads up for people who are watching today, a future interview coming up, I think it's February 3rd, I'm going to have with Captain Todd Kruder. I've already interviewed him once on depression. He's a retired Navy captain. I'm going to be interviewing him and his wife, Sharon, live. So to get the spouse's feedback on it, the piece on it, and have a discussion with the two of them here live, I think that will be really good because we're seeing so many veterans pass away from suicide and there's so much to live for.
And I mean, when you speak about the veterans, I mean, that's something also that's really dear to my heart. My dad, when I was a kid, he was in the Navy for the first 4 or 5 years of my life. He eventually got out and did his thing for many years, but later on, he rejoined the National Guard as a chaplain. And he's had, several tours over in Iraq and Afghanistan. And as a Globetrotter, one of the highlights of my career or the highlights of my years would be the chance that we would have to go to the different military bases across Europe and Asia between Christmas and Thanksgiving. And to be able to go over to those military bases, those small cities, so to speak, and bring a little bit of home to those families, those kids, even the basketball clinics. We used to do basketball clinics on a few of those military bases abroad. And to be able to have those connections and be able to say thanks to those military veterans and people taking time to leave their country to go across the waters, across the land to make sure that we have a better place here. Just so much respect for you guys. And I just want to say thanks to all the veterans who are listening. And we're thankful for you. I mean, even now I'm getting goosebumps thinking about it. I mean, flying on those airplanes, you sitting up against the wall, the Black Hawks, being dropped off into different places in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, these are experiences that are once in a lifetime, even performing on ships, the USS Theodore Roosevelt. I mean, I had a chance to fly out to the USS Theodore Roosevelt from Bahrain, spend the night, do a show on the ship in front of a couple of thousand troops. I mean, that was one of the most exhilarating experiences that I've ever had, being dropped down from the top where they bring the planes down, drop down onto this level where they had cleared out and made a basketball court and give us an opportunity to give back to the military people.
I can just see your excitement. You can see your energy, like, that was like,
so cool.
Yeah.
And it's funny too, because when we would go out, when we went out to the Theodore Roosevelt, that's the one that I remember the most. And a lot of those sailors, they talk about, man, that's pretty cool. You guys, you're going to do the catapult. Like a lot of them hadn't even experienced that, to get catapulted off the ship. I mean, it's crazy.
Yeah. Not all of them get to do that. Yeah, that's right. Thank you all the listeners who are commenting here. Karen, Jerry, Carl, Karen, Michael, Parenti, Paul. If I missed somebody, Ariel, we appreciate you watching and listening to this. So 4 years ago, your career with the Globetrotters ended. Well, actually, before we talk about that, because this was during when you were Globetrotter, getting to participate in the Amazing Race.
Yeah.
And that's part of that because of a change in leadership, right? Because the new owners of the team really wanted the team to be out there on some of these shows.
Yeah. So as I read some of the comments, I think it was Ariel, she was talking about seeing Curly Neal and Meadowlark Lemon at Madison Square Garden. And those are the guys who we all saw, on Disney Wild World of Sports, when the Saturday morning cartoons, those were the guys who the Globetrotters kind of became synonymous with. And when the new ownership came in 2007, it was Shamrock, an investment company out of, I think they're affiliated with Disney. But the president who came at that time, he was Kirk Snyder. He came in from the WWE. And his vision was that he wanted to create stars again. He wanted people to recognize us outside of our Globetrotter uniforms. He didn't want people to only see us one time a year when we came to your town. So we began to reach out to different television shows. And at that time, I mean, I was a big fan of The Amazing Race. I've been watching it for the 5 or 6 years, even previous to that. And Big Easy and I, of course, we both were fans of the show, and we were lucky enough to put together a really good video with the encouragement of this new leadership and the wantingness to create new stars. We had an opportunity to do The Amazing Race. I mean, and a lot of people think that, oh, yeah, we got an advantage because we'd already traveled so much, but such a big difference in traveling, having somebody book everything for you, book the hotels. Not the case on The Amazing Race. You know, it's up to us to book our flights. It's up to us to figure out where we're going to stay from night to night. It's up to us to figure out how much money we need to spend or save for each leg of the race. But I mean, it's just a tremendous organization, tremendous opportunity that they gave myself and Big Easy. And we were just so happy to be able to represent, our families, ourselves, and that the Globetrotter brand on national television every Sunday night for 12 weeks in a row, not only once, not twice, but 3 times. And not only once, not only twice, but 3 times we lost. Importantly, we had a great time, and that's what it was all about. And a lot of times after we would do The Amazing Race, it was so fun when people would come to the games and talk about how much fun they had watching us on the show and the memories that we gave them that they have maybe forgotten about as Globetrotters. And they would tell us how for that short amount of time, for that 2 hours, watching The Amazing Race or watching the Globetrotter show, they were able to take their minds away, and also that they could watch it as a family. As a family, you could see what teamwork was all about. Win, lose, or draw, we made sure that we had fun. And I also tell people, in my Globetrotter career over 18 years, I was undefeated. I never lost. But in my Amazing Race career, 0-3. So those were the 3 losses that I took. But even moving forward, the new people that came in on the Globetrotters now, the Hershey brand, great people, great family. They own several amusement parks throughout the United States. They started in Branson, Missouri. They have Stone Mountain, Georgia. They have the aquariums up in Cincinnati, the duck boat tours up in Boston. They've really done a great job of even taking the brand to another level. I was able to be a part of it the first couple of years of their ownership, but through COVID right now, they're not touring, but I do have really great hope that soon things will get back to normal. So those guys, my former teammates, and also those new players, and men and women, would be able to have the same opportunity that I was able to have for that 18 years.
Answer this. So I want to know how you handled this situation, because I think a lot of people have been in this situation before. When you checked in for your first college game.
Oh, man. So this is what happened.
You came off the bench to go into the game. What did you do or not
my
do?
very first college game, I'm at Centenary College, which is located in Shreveport, Louisiana. I'm from Arkansas. And the team that we were playing against was the University of Arkansas Little Rock, a team that I would have loved to. They would have recruited me. I would have gone there instead of sitting there. No disrespect to my school, but I definitely would have gone there instead of where I went. So I was super excited to play against them. And they had a really great player on their team that I was excited to play against too. And his name was Derek Fisher. He went on to win, I think, 4 or 5 NBA championships. But I was just so excited and so nervous to get in the game that I pretty much, when coach called my name, I ran straight from the bench into the game. I didn't even go to the scorer's table. So I had my warm-ups on. And I just remember looking around and everybody laughing at me, even the opposition team laughing, saying, hey, man, you can't play with all of that on. So I had to rip off my pants and get ready to play. But, that was the start of something beautiful. And I'll tell another funny story, too, about one of my first games. And this was my first time playing football. I think I wrote about this in the book as well. I used to be really small. I was always the smallest person on the football team or the basketball team. And I was playing running back. So coach called my number. The very first play I'd ever played organized any type of sport. Called my name. I run to the left, sweep left. I run to the right. I'm open. I'm running down the field. There's nothing but end zone. I get down there. I put the ball down. I'm a 7th grader now. There's an 8th and 9th grade, what we call a junior high game after this. So I remember turning around and pointing, to my 8th and 9th graders in the stands, and they were pointing at me. I thought they were celebrating with me, but I looked around, and actually they were pointing at me to pick up the ball because I had just put the ball down 2 yards short of the actual end zone. And my best friend recovered the fumble. And so I often tell people now that always taught me that once I start something, I get to finish. I run through the back of the end zone. I run all the way through the finish line. So I just encourage anybody, hey, if you started something, maybe you started writing a book, maybe you have a vision of starting your own company, your own brand. I encourage you, don't stop short. Some of you guys may have put the ball down at half court. Maybe you're just right there at that finish line, but go ahead and pick that ball up and cross the line. Run through the finish line, run through the back of the end zone, because when you run through the back of the end zone, stuff like this is a result you get. You get your own book, you get your own brand.
Awesome. That's awesome advice. That is really good advice. I see people here making connections like Carl and Karen. They're like, oh, I sent you a connection request. So that's pretty cool.
Well, I didn't know so many people watched The Amazing Race. We got a few Amazing Race people up here. That's pretty cool.
And then Michael has created another a poll. Okay. So
I love it.
I think we're going to have to play horse at some point, Herb.
Absolutely. We do. Me, okay. You, and Dr. Barnes, Dr. Russ Barnes.
Yeah, Russ Barnes. Yes. How tall are you?
Me, I'm 6'3".
6'3". Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So you got the calls. You were a player coach too at the end.
Yeah.
And then you got a call about your career ended with the Globetrotter. Right. So my onward movement that I founded is all about like discovering your authentic self and figuring out what's next and those kinds of things. And so how did you feel? Because like your whole identity, was it being a Globetrotter? And then you had to like, who am I? What do I want to do next? Because you weren't expecting that to happen.
Right. It was totally unexpected, but it was obviously what was supposed to happen. So I just remember sitting at my favorite bar, having a drink with one of my best friends, college teammates, and just having a conversation. And I remember the phone ringing and being excited that it was possibly me getting another assignment, the next tour that I'm about to go on. And that wasn't the phone call. It was the phone call to let me know that, after 18 years, it's been a good run, but we're going into a new direction. And at that point, the saddest thing that had ever happened to me probably in my life was my grandmother passing while I was in college. So you talk about depressed, nervous. It was about 24 to 48 hours I was a wreck. Put myself in a room for about 2 days. I was living alone at that time, so I didn't really speak to anybody. But what came to me through all of that was that I get to be humble. I get to give thanks to all the people in that organization who supported me and helped me over that 18 years. I mean, we hear today about, professional sports, and a lot of guys feel like they're supposed to be there. But it was a privilege for me to be able to do that for that amount of time. So what I did was 2 days later, I got all together a list of names of people that I wanted to thank. And a lot of those people were within the organization. I just thanked them for the opportunity. But, over the course of several months, I began to realize that when I joined the team, there was somebody that had to lose their spot. And with me leaving, there's somebody else that gets to have that same opportunity that I had for 18 years. So quickly after that, I was able to move beyond the fact that part of that chapter in my life was over. And still to this day, I've always gone to the games when they come back, and I just love being able to look out there and seeing those new young guys out there playing and realizing that, I had that spot, but now that person is getting an opportunity to live the same type of life and meet some of the most amazing people that they could ever dreamed of. I mean, if it wasn't for the Globetrotters, I probably wouldn't have my 2 kids. I wouldn't have met the Pope. I wouldn't have met the president. Who knows? But I'm grateful. I'm humble. It's just, again, I mean, it was a setback, but at the same time, when they gave me the opportunity, it was an opportunity. And just like that opportunity, I used that to launch my next thing. And that's me actually being a motivational speaker, being an author, because what the universe did, what God showed me was the world. And now what I get to do from my 85, 90 countries that I've traveled to is share and let people know that the world is not a bad place. I have friends from every different religion, every different political background that you can imagine. And at the end of the day, the thing that we want most is to make this world a better place. We want health for our family. We want success. And we want our kids to be happy.
How'd you come up with that? Kindness is free. That's your hashtag.
Yeah, Emily, it came to me. I used to, if you ever look in some of the Globetrotter programs, my motto was patience and kindness. I would put that in every year. Patience and kindness. I feel like if we're patient and we're kind, that things will eventually work themselves out. The way that we may not expect them to, but the way that they're supposed to. And I was talking on a podcast. It's the Jeremy Ryan Slate podcast. And it was the first time that I said it out loud. Kindness is free. I was given an example of something. And I think it was something as simple as social media. We have people that have these huge social media followings. I got a decent social media following, but not as many as most. But to actually take time out and comment or thank a person or follow a person, it doesn't cost me anything. And it could change that person's day. It could change their mindset. A retweet could change a person's life. kindness is free. It doesn't cost us anything. And the more we give, the more we get back. And that's just something that I adapted about this time last year. And kindness truly is free. And I pretty much anything that I do, I'm talking about kindness is free. The t-shirt, I wear it on my body. I have the pop sockets that I have on my phone. Kindness is free.
That's
And
awesome.
this is, if you see me walking through an airport or if I'm on a flight, you'll probably see me handing out these. I'll see a young kid or a flight attendant and they serve me, and hey, here you go. This is for you. Kindness is free.
I love that. I love that. Wow.
And this is what I just want to instill in young people, adults, the world with what I'm working on now with hoping to have, or actually getting to have basketball retreats as I'm getting ready to move to Florida here and looking to actually start up some basketball retreats. I want to bring in about 10 kids at a time, bring them to my home over the course of a weekend and just teach them a different way of thinking, show them that anything is possible and show them that although we come from different backgrounds, these kids, these people that you're in here with are going to be people that you're connected with for the rest of your life, including myself. And I want to teach them the importance of kindness and together. I mean, we can always learn how to agree to disagree, but there are so many things, like I said earlier, there's so many things that we probably have in common that we don't realize. That kid sitting in the corner at school who may look like he doesn't fit, you never know what that kid's going to be when he grows up. So don't be good to that kid just because you think that one day they may be able to do something for you. Just be kind just for the sake of being kind and knowing how that makes you feel.
Yeah. Think about how that would change the world if we could all be kind. And like you said, it's free. Kindness can be just a smile at somebody from across the room.
Simple as that. Speaking.
Yeah.
Asking a person how they're doing.
Yep. So
thanks, Michael.
Yeah.
You're the gift. And we get to be the gifts that keep on giving.
Yeah, definitely. You said that one of the books that you really like is Love Works. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? You wrote about that in your book.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's a leadership book and talk about, the Hershon family who own the Globetrotters now. At that time when they purchased the Globetrotters, the president, his name was Joel Manby. And a lot of the things that they talk about within that company, that organization, is how love works. And it's just a leadership mindset that Joel put in that organization, all under that umbrella of those 13 or so different amusement parks. And he bought that in through the Globetrotters. And love actually does work. If we use love the right way, anything can happen. Just like kindness, love is free as well. Sometimes love hurts, but financially, love doesn't really cost us anything. Love and kindness are all these things that cost us nothing that we hold back. And we get to give these things away with abundance. I talked about on one of I think I was talking to a group of kids before COVID happened. And I talked about how, it doesn't cost us anything. Love your neighbor. Show them that you're open to conversation. Show them you're open to help. Show them that you're open to support. And I think that in reading that book, that's something that Joel talked about. He talked about the importance of making your employees feel important, making them feel like what they have to say is important. And that's something that even with the Globetrotters, that's something that happened later on in my career. There was times when we didn't get to put input in on the show ideas. But once the new organization came in, it was the first time that we actually had a chance to come in to the meetings as players who are out there on the court to talk about, hey, I think this will work. I think that'll work. And who knows better than the people that are actually out there on the court. So I definitely recommend that book, Love Works, to anybody who's the leader of a group of people, a business, a corporation, or somebody who just wants to, or maybe one day wants to become a leader of an organization or a company. Emily, I'll just share with all these people that are listening that if you want to find out more about me, I do have a website up, herblank.com. Also, you can find me on LinkedIn. We're all connected on LinkedIn. You and I are connected on LinkedIn. I'm available on all the social media platforms. You can find me on TikTok, Instagram, Twitter. So if you guys have any questions for me, even beyond this, I'll be happy to connect and share with you even more of what I have going on and the vision that I have for myself as well as, the world and the young people that I get to impact, young and old.
I'm excited because you're just spreading so much goodness and kindness throughout the world. And I'm excited for what you've got coming with what you're going to do with kids and basketball and things like that. You're just making a difference. And here Jerry says, say yes to love, no to hate, love God, love your neighbor. But she asked a question. She wants a story about your grandma.
Oh, man, my grandma. Well, my great grandma, I'll tell you about. I mean, she was probably one of the most loving people that first of all, I was lucky to grow up in a town where I had my great grandmother as well as my two grandmas, my dad's mom and my mother's mom. But my great grandmother, she was so awesome. When I would stay with her, I would always have something to eat because she would cook 3 times a day. But one of the funniest things that she would always do, because my town is so small that you could walk across town in about 15 minutes. So I would walk from her house to my house or there and back. And every time I would walk in there, she would come in there and I would walk in and she would say, "Come on over here, baby, and give me a hug." And so I would walk over and give her a hug and she would pull out this spray and it would be like an air freshener and she would just spray it all over me. She said, "You're smelling so fresh. You smell like the outside. Let grandma put some of this on you, baby." But every time I would walk in the house, never failed, she would always spray me with the air freshener. I'm not sure how good that was for my lungs back then, but I'm still here. So it must not have been too bad.
Yeah, that's a good story. And Shannon says, thank you for boosting morale for the Department of Defense and for continuing to make a difference.
Thank you, Shannon.
Yeah. Thank you very much for being on the Onward podcast, sir. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Emily. And before I go, I can't go without saying this. Kindness is free. It doesn't cost us a dime to be kind. So make sure we give it away with abundance, knowing that we will never run out. When it comes to kindness and love, we're all millionaires. We're actually kindness and love billionaires. So let's live that way.
What a great way to end it. Thank you. Thanks for listening, Onwarders. And thank you, Herb, for such an awesome interview. I look forward to playing you in horse one day soon. I'm recording this part of the episode on the 1st of June, 2021. This is exactly 2 years to the date that the Onward podcast was first published. I can't believe I've been able to publish at least one episode a week for 2 years. So much has gone on in those 2 years. I've learned so much about myself. A lot of it I've shared in different episodes on this podcast. And I plan to continue. This is the first episode of season 3 of the Onward podcast. I would greatly appreciate it if you could leave a review on Apple Podcasts. By leaving a review, you help other people find this podcast. You help it move up in the rankings. And the purpose of this podcast is to help people realize that they are not alone, to hear other stories of facing adversity and moving forward and discovering themselves along the way. Herb's adversity was that he was unexpectedly laid off from the Harlem Globetrotters. And I loved hearing his process for how he ended up turning that into an opportunity to spread his word about kindness is free all around the world. Thank you, Herb, for sharing your story on the Onward podcast.